name is David Bell. I'm Director of the Cultivation Association. On behalf of the staff and board members, welcome to this event to both introduce you to the Correctional Association, the problem that we face, not as an association, but in prisons, and the specific work the association does. And I think we have a very excellent evening planned with some people who will tell you in better terms what it is that we do. So let me tell you why I got involved. Of course I got involved because of my head, because the prison situation is really messed up. We spend too much money, recidivism is terrible, all that intellectual stuff. But I agreed to get involved really because of my heart, because of the two deepest emotions are both involved. First is fear, and I guess I have a fear that I could have done something in my worst moment that could have ended me in a bad place. Somebody that I love could have done it. Second part of that fear is when they were in there, they could have been raped, beaten, but more importantly, not given a chance when they come out. And those are real fears. The love part, the other big part is that, America likes second chances, and we're great at that. We're not great at that with people that are incarcerated. In fact, there are so many instances where second chances become impossible. And so that's why I'm involved. And I'm also involved because of a wonderful lady named Sophia Elijah, who is the executive director, who works tirelessly, taken off from her Harvard career as a law professor, defense attorney, to take that passion and turn it on, making change in New York State. She's a great lady, and I'm going to let her talk about what happens at the Correctional Association. And get ready, because of course at the end, we're going to ask you to join our journey, both in terms of time, if you can, but also in terms of money. So, Sophia. Right there.
Good evening and welcome. Really, really pleased to have you all here. This is really a full house. So, the Correctional Association, many of you got the information sheet. How many of you got that? Right, great. So I'm not going to tell you that information because you know that already. But what you don't know is that the way we do our work is that we are a small team of tireless, tenacious, you don't want to get in our way advocates. And so before I go any further, I would like all the people who work at the Correctional Association to stand up for me. Because the amazing work that you hear that we do couldn't happen without them. It also couldn't happen without a very special group of people who give of their time, their expertise, their experience, and their love to the Correctional Association, and that is our board of directors. And I'm going to try to call each of them out by name. We're going to start with Jeff Bird. And can you raise your hand, Jeff? David Kessler. David Bell, who you just heard from. Sharon Katz. Barry Bloom. Ricky Jones. Llewellyn Connolly. I'm scoping out the crowd here. Who's Greg Walker's hiding? And Rich Booty is a director in the making. Where are you, Rich? Okay. Did I leave anybody out? Lisa Bipchick's hiding all the way in the back. Yes. Thank you. So they, and along with several other people who give of their time, are the board of directors that are the wind beneath our wings. And then, of course, there's all of you who are supporters and newcomers to learn about the work that we do. You know, there's been a lot of information in the news in the past 12 months about atrocities inside our prison system and inside the jail system. And we at the Correctional Association have been fighting tirelessly to address those issues and to bring that information to your attention. Just recently I was talking to somebody about the work that we do, and I was trying to give them a quick explanation. And I said, you know, we're not the people who push the envelope, we're the people who make the envelope. And everybody else then pushes it, because we give everybody the information, and we know the fastest way to get the word out is by what? Not social media. Although that makes a difference. Word of mouth, right? How many of you are here because somebody you know said you need to come to this and learn, right? So that proves my point. So that's what we're going to do today. Now let me explain. We were expecting 4 panelists. 2 of them, I think, are captured by the MTA. One of them, Tina Tynan, works during the day full time, and then she's a student. And so I'm sure that she's en route. And the other, George Williams, and you also hear about his journey, was a victim of a vicious assault by guards in Attica back in 2011. And some of you may have seen the front page story in the New York Times on February 28th of 2015, where the story of Mr. Williams was told. Well, fast forward today, finally, depositions are starting in the civil suit that he's brought against the guards who brutally beat him almost to death. And so, as he said to me, I don't know, Ms. Elijah, how long do depositions last? I said, I'm a criminal defense lawyer, how would I know that? So hopefully he will make it here too, but we're gonna start with the 2 panelists we have, and I'm gonna ask them to come up and join me. And we'll grab that other float mic. Have a seat. Let me introduce you to my immediate left, Tyrell Muhammad, who works at the Correctional Association. Let's clap it up for Mr. Muhammad. And to his left is Angie Wadlington. Let's clap it up for Angie. And so let's just start with this question. On a personal level, and I'm going to ask you both to address this question. Why is the work of the Correctional Association important to you? And Muhammad, I'll ask you if you'll start.
Let me start.
Yes.
Good evening.
Just talk right into that mic.
Thank you for coming. Why the work is important to me? On a personal note, it's important because I've been under those circumstances. I know what it is to be locked up, and particularly in solitary. And I always say to myself that I owe an untold debt to many of the men who sacrificed their lives so that I can be here amongst you today to speak to you today about these issues. So that's where my commitment comes from, the men that didn't make it out. So that's why it's very important to me to do this work, because I want to be a person that be able to speak for the voiceless, because at one time I was voiceless.
Thank you. And Angie.
Good evening. The Correctional Association, for me personally, I was a youth incarcerated. I did spend 23 hours in a cell. And if it wasn't for the Correctional Association, I wouldn't be able to speak my story. I wouldn't be able to be voices for other youth that are still incarcerated, that have no voice and no say-so. They don't know that when they come home that it's a possibility, so I stand for them every day in every work that I do since I started working with them. Thank you.
So don't give that mic back. So I'm going to ask you to elaborate a little bit. You said you've spoken and shared your story. Tell us a little bit about the work that you have done with the Correctional Association in sharing your story, because I know the people in the audience don't know you've been to Geneva.
Thanks to Angelo. He works with the Correctional Association, and every time there's something going on, he puts my name out there, and he asked if I was interested in going to Geneva to speak to the UN for Children Against Torture, and It was my first time on a plane, believe me. The day before I wasn't gonna go. But the experience and actually having what I've learned, how can I explain it? When I first came home, I was scared to talk to police. I was scared to be next to a police officer. Now I have police officers that are friends. I stand tall now and I tell them I'm a convicted felon. I'm not afraid to hold it back anymore, and that's the Correctional Association helped me with that. And now I'm able, once I did go into the jail I was incarcerated in, and I did help with the youth. We're working on a project with Transitions to Freedom now in Long Island. We're making something so we can help all men, women, and children that are incarcerated.
And how old were you when you first went in, Angie?
I was 17. I got charged. They waited until I was 18. They charged me as an adult, and I was looking at 25 years to life. I sold drugs to an undercover cop. It was something I did silly. I only blame myself now. I was dating someone who was much older than me who didn't want to get in trouble, so I took the rap for it at the end of the day, and out of going back and forth to court, I did 2 years. I actually fell under the Rockefeller law, which just changed at that time, and been working really, really hard to make a difference.
And you were prosecuted as an adult?
Yes.
Okay.
As an adult, they waited.
Right. And Muhammad, how old were you?
I was 19 when I got arrested in 1979. So from 1979 to 2005, I was in New York State correctional facilities.
You spoke about solitary confinement. Can you share with the audience a little bit about that experience?
Yes. I always try to give an illustration at first. I always ask people if they could possibly imagine being in your bathroom every day for 23 hours or more. Sometimes in the wintertime when it's snow and we in the house 2 or 3 days, we get cabin fever and we want to change the scenery. Solitary confinement, that's not an option. Whatever the scenery is, you will endure it for as long as you're there. So if it's pea green paint, you will look at pea green paint for 6 months, 6 years, 10 years, 20 years. Nothing changes. Everything remains the same. In order to have a sense of sanity, you have to do some real, what I used to call high-hole thinking. And that's reading National Geographic from 1930 and 1940. Reader's Digest. The arts or the novels that people went to college to read. I had the luxury of reading in the box. So I read Huckleberry Finn in the box. I read pieces of War and Peace in the box. And I didn't know if these things were really available to me, but I was just utilizing them to, keep my sanity. I didn't want to lose my mind. But, other things occurred. It quenched my thirst for learning and gave me that appetite. So while I was there in solitary confinement, though it was horrendous, though it was, torturous, I made the best of it. Not everybody could do that. And I'm traumatized today, from that experience. Please, I'm not an altogether package. I sleep 4 hours a day. I live in Brooklyn, but I'm the second one at work every day in Harlem. I don't sleep. I have anxiety. There's a lot of maladies that I have coping skills to work it out. But being in solitary confinement, a lot of those things manifest itself in there that I didn't know that I had, psychological problems. And once you're in that environment, everything comes out. Whatever character defect you have, it just comes out, it highlights itself. Because all you dare is with yourself.
Thank you. You spent some time at Clinton, right?
Yes, I did.
And for those of you who don't know, Clinton is near the Canadian border, and it's a facility where there was an escape back in June of last year. And following that escape, we learned about treatment that was being visited upon people who were incarcerated at Clinton. And I know part of your job, Muhammad, is that you receive letters from people who are incarcerated at Clinton, and you're part of the prison visiting project of the Correctional Association. Could you share a little bit about the kinds of things that we were learning was taking place at Clinton before and after the escape?
Well, prior to the escape, there was always abuses. If you've ever been to Clinton Dallamore, it's a correction facility that's near the Canadian border. The whole staff there is white males, mainly. There's no Latino, there's no blacks. It's something out of the 1940s, middle America. So you're in an environment like that where the guards, the only time they ever see somebody black and Latino is either inside the facility or on TV. So they have their own preconceived notion of who you are or what you are. You couple that now with a real vicious, racist attitude. Now you really in the 1940s in Birmingham, because that's just the behavior and the mindset of the guards there. And after the escape, that behavior manifests itself even worse, where some of the torture that was going on was comparable with Abu Ghraib. People were being waterboarded, plastic bag put over their head, water being pushed in their face to almost suffocation. And these were innocent people. These weren't people that was involved in the escape or anything. These were people who the staff administrative believed they had information about it. That's it. You might have information, and we need to know. But you would never know any of this would occur if the CA didn't go inside to investigate these issues. You know, it's just relatively new. I always tell people since the Orange is the New Black came out, issues of mass incarceration is now a talking point. It's approvable. At one time, you know, people couldn't have a conversation at the dinner table concerning mass incarceration or prison issues. But even though it's the case now, do understand we only got a small window of opportunity. And that window of opportunity is right now. And I'm kind of glad that you're here tonight, because really, we need all of you in this hour, because now we're exposing atrocity more so than ever. We have all kinds of media outlets that wants to know, that wants to look inside. You know, social media ain't behind the wall. I can't Instagram you back there. But family members are coming forward because they've seen the traction that we have now. You know, news papers are coming forward because they see that, you know, there's some unbearable, torturous behavior going on, and we always wonder what is wrong with them. Well, people are not just acting out just because they want to act out. There's always a contributing factor behind that.
Thank you. Before we go to Q&A from the audience, I want to share with you, since Tina hasn't arrived yet, we also have a Women in Prison project at the Correctional Association. And Gail Smith's our new project director. So one of the victories that we recently had was that the governor, just in December, signed a bill based on a lot of hard work from the Correctional Association's Women in Prison project that at that time was led by Tamar Kraft Stoller and Jaya Vasandani and Andrea Williams and Anissa Sabor. Anissa and Andrea are here. And they pushed to get a bill passed that said women who are pregnant cannot be shackled to a hospital bed during any of the 3 trimesters of pregnancy. Let's give them a round of applause for that. Now, Tina was someone who was incarcerated, who was pregnant at the time, and back in 2009, we got the first bill we were pushing on the first bill and finally got the governor to sign it that said women during childbirth could not be shackled. Okay? Now some of you might be thinking, how barbaric? It should be a no-brainer, right? Except a lot of barbaric things happen inside our prisons, as Muhammad and Angela were sharing with you. And so Tina was pregnant after the first bill had been passed. And when she went into labor, she was shackled despite the fact that the bill had been passed. And in our investigation, we found that 27 of the women who gave birth post the first bill being passed, 23 of those 27 women were shackled in violation of the law. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and Tina was going to speak to that because she came through our program at the Correctional Association called Reconnect, which works with women who are formerly incarcerated. She became an advocate, and she speaks frequently about the important work that we do. And had she been able to come here tonight, she would have shared that story with you herself. But I wanted to make sure that you knew that before we go into questions and answers. So now I have a trusty assistant in here, Matthew, who is, where are you, Matthew? There we go. Who's going to move this float mic around and take questions from the audience. Questions?
Saw that one first. Work my way down.
Thank you. Sophia, this is a question for you. Can you discuss some of the things that the CA is doing? Anti-shackling is one of them. Some of the things that we're doing that relate to some of the issues in prisons.
There's a host of them. Let me try to give you a quick list. We focus, in no particular order, on the issue of solitary confinement, the abusive use of solitary confinement to try to bring a halt to it. And in fact, we have a piece of legislation pending that's gotten a lot of support in the Assembly and some from the Senate that would say we need to halt the use of solitary confinement. It would restrict the length of time that people could be held in a cell and would protect a number of vulnerable groups, including people who have mental health challenges, the very young, pregnant women, etc., and the elderly. So that's one piece of work that we're doing. We're also focusing on issues with respect to the treatment of people who have mental health challenges inside. We pushed to them, we got a bill passed called the Shoe Exclusion Bill that says people who have a serious mental illness cannot be placed in solitary confinement. We've looked at treatment for people who have mental health challenges. We've looked at substance abuse treatment. We've looked at medical care, hepatitis C and HIV care. We've also looked at educational and vocational programs inside. We have focused on the issue of violence and abuse visited by guards on the incarcerated population. What am I leaving out? Oh, raise the age, how could I forget that? To raise the age of criminal responsibility so that we no longer will prosecute our children, such as Angie, as adults, and that we will not incarcerate them with adults. We also have been focusing on the treatment of LGBTQ young people who come into contact with the criminal justice system. We found that they're disproportionately represented in every stage in the criminal justice system. Now, I'm sure my staff will tell me something that I left out. What did I leave out? Excuse me? Oh, yes, and the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act is a piece of legislation that we're pushing for that says that people who are victims of domestic violence and can show a direct correlation between their status as a victim and the crime for which they've been convicted or they're being charged, the judge should be able to exercise discretion and go outside the sentencing guidelines and divert those cases or reduce sentences. So that's a short list of the things that we're working on.
Can you talk to us about Attica and your efforts at Attica? What's going on there and what are you trying to do?
You want to start or should I start, Mohammed? The short version is we're trying to shut down Attica. Can I get And some of you might say, well, but Attica's just one facility, and you're absolutely correct, because there's problems in a lot of them. But our campaign to shut down Attica is an effort to draw attention to the horrific abuses that happen throughout the system, and Attica is symbolic, and it also is a place where many of the most horrific atrocities happen. And I don't think there's a week that goes by that we don't learn about another atrocity at Attica. And in fact, I think I'm going to share, just yesterday, I heard that the Office of Special Investigations, which OSI, which is the internal docs investigative team, that they were at Attica to investigate an allegation of abuse. And while they were there, the representative got into a verbal confrontation with one of the guards. And that guard hit him. And when the OSI guy went to defend himself, a group of guards jumped him and beat him up.